Good morning, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and welcome to, uh, well, a welcome to today's video. I don't have a good title of it, and I don't really have. It's just a discussion, I guess, of all the stuff that happened on Monday and Tuesday. Because oh boy, do we have a lot, and I mean a lot to go over. Like, not even kidding. Um, Starting on Monday, um, well, that actually is why I have redistricting stuff coming up to talk about, because that's important and still a thing. So, the next thing that happened is very, very, very late on Monday after I had gone to sleep. Um, well, somebody leaked at the time what was just an alleged draft of Samuel Alito's opinion for what was the name of the actual case? Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, the abortion case out of Mississippi, and then of course later on Tuesday, somewhere in the middle of the afternoon, Chief Justice Roberts confirmed that that was indeed a real draft. Now, it was dated from February the 10th. There's a lot of things that could have changed since it was released, and we're going to talk about this as well. And then, of course, Tuesday we had Ohio and Indiana hosting their primaries. I'm not really going to look at Indiana's gubernatorial primary, or wait, no, they don't have one. I'm sorry. So we're just going to look at Indiana's House primaries. But in Ohio, the Senate election and the gubernatorial election could theoretically be competitive, especially after... Some people are going to argue, especially after this decision is released, they're going to be competitive because Democrats are going to be motivated. There's some good statistical analysis that says it's probably not the case because there's so many other issues that are going to be at the forefront of people's minds in November when the election is actually held, that this is going to take a back seat. Because at the end of the day, it's going to take a back seat because when you're broke and prices keep rising, do you really give a shit about social policy? And pardon the language on that one, but that's kind of true. And, of course, the last thing we'll talk about is New York's redistricting, because we actually have some maps released for that. They're all proposed maps, and the special master that was appointed by the court does not have to abide by those. So we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, let's talk about Roe v. Wade and what overturning it probably implies. Number one, just under half the states in the country either have trigger laws, where that if Roe v. Wade is overturned, they'll ban abortion in nearly all cases. Some have already done it, and some, are more than likely going to, just because Republicans. Now, I tend to side on the pro-life argument because, well, number one, Catholic. Number two, I've always never understood why a person, other than reasons of they die if they don't, or rape, would want to get rid of their own child. But that's a me thing. I'm a dude, so of course, grain of salt there. it's going to be interesting to see how this actually works out. Because they're not saying that we're going to ban abortion. The court isn't. Which they don't have the power to do that, obviously. All they can say is that, no, this law isn't unconstitutional. Roe v. Wade was determined incorrectly. And this is a matter for the states or Congress to decide, rather than saying, no, you have to require this. And there's a few reasons why I somewhat agree with the opinion that was written. And there's some reasons to actually disagree with it. Number one, I've always kind of been critical, having read parts of Roe v. Wade for, various courses I took in college. One of them was just a basic understanding of what our constitutional rights were. And that was just a, political science course. It was, a 100 level to kind of cover some big important ones, such as, free speech. Our professor did talk a little bit about the Second Amendment, which was pretty cool. And I found out through that he actually believed in concealed carry and was not a big fan of gun control, which is very rare for college professors. And there was a few others, such as what does the court say about the death penalty and a few other things. And then the other one was actually a constitutional law class that I took because my parents were thinking, hey, maybe you want to look at being a lawyer. And I said, you know what, I'll take a course, see what it's about. I actually really liked it. I really liked the constitutional law class. And I learned some things there. It kind of helped me be a little bit more literate on legal issues, particularly constitutional legal issues. I'm not claiming to be some sort of, constitutional law scholar, but I'm a little bit more informed than the average legal layperson. And I've always thought that the argument that they used was a bit flawed. In that I don't think they were answering the right question. Or more accurately, I think the justices in that case were looking for a justification for their decision rather than starting with answering the question, which would lead to a justified decision. Does not necessarily mean they got the outcome wrong. Because just because you get the process wrong doesn't mean you get the outcome incorrect. I'm trying to think of a good example in constitutional law where they kind of trying to think of a good example where they got the process wrong but the outcome correct. And I'm not sure there's a good example of that that I can think of off the top of my head. That is a case that people would understand. My viewers would understand. But this may be one. Basically, what the Supreme Court is saying is let the states decide. And some states are going to permit it, and others aren't. And I think that's reasonably fair. It's the way it probably should have been done in the first place, from a purely legal standpoint. Obviously, I'm appalled that the outcome was what it was, but, again, take the grains of salt that I've provided for you. And the other thing is, I'm going to say something. I believe when Barrett and Kavanaugh were nominated, I believe I said that they're not going to overturn Roe. Well, I was wrong. And you can look at my reasoning, and you can pretty easily find out why I would have been wrong, why I was wrong in that case. And most of it boiled down to, I genuinely don't think that the justices are going to want to. I don't think that the more moderate conservative justices, that those being Roberts, Kavanaugh, I didn't think those two would be willing to just completely overturn precedent. They want to roll back some of the things that were said, but I don't think they would go full bore. Number one, Roberts is all about institutional appearance and making sure that the Supreme Court is respectable, proper, and at least appears to be doing its job in a nonpartisan manner. Kavanaugh is still a young justice, same with Barrett to an extent, so maybe they'd look to the Chief Justice for guidance. Seems that's not entirely the case here. Now, I'm curious as to whom what the breakdown is. Obviously, I don't see the three liberal justices striking down. I don't see the three liberal justices obviously are going to be in the dissent. And it's probably going to be Roberts as well in the dissent, which I kind of think is a little bit weird. And the reason why I kind of think it's a little bit weird is because him being in the dissent, yeah, it means he gets to choose who authors the dissent. But I would think he would rather be in the majority, not because he necessarily agrees with the majority, but because he would probably want to prevent Thomas from writing the opinion or choosing who writes the opinion. Because Thomas, after Breyer retires, is the most senior associate justice. And of course, the most senior justice, on whichever side they happen to be, assigns the opinion. I'm not sure Thomas would have the... Thomas tends to be Thomas. That was one thing I've learned from reading his opinions, is that it's really difficult to describe. You have to read his opinions to understand it. A lot of liberals will say he's just not intellectually capable, which is not the case. His opinions are very well thought out and quite smart, but the reasoning is not exactly what I would use. It can be very straightforward. It's very definitive. Whereas, people who've read my writing style, I like to cover every angle. I'm very philosophical. I have run-on sentences, and I kind of ramble. Okay? So, different style, basically, is... Unfortunately, Thomas's style can come across as crass and lacking of nuance, which I think that Roberts would want to avoid on a decision like this. Alito, I think, writes very well, and I think he's a very, very good writer, but I can't help but think that Roberts would want to be in the majority just to make sure that the majority opinion is done by the right person, basically, to avoid to avoid as much controversy as possible, basically. Now the other question is, who leaked it? Well, personally, I believe we can actually eliminate any of the justices themselves. Number one, the conservatives wouldn't want to leak this. It's not their style anyway. Roberts definitely wouldn't, because that goes against the whole idea of institutional, of the Supreme Court being a proper institution and respectable and, above partisan politics. Like I said, I don't think it's the style of any of the other conservatives. And the liberals, probably not Breyer, because I doubt he wants the last few months of his term on the Supreme Court, the last few months of his working life, I doubt he wants that much controversy. He knew it was going to be controversial to begin with, but I don't think he wanted that much controversy before he retired. Kagan, not really her style. And that leaves Sotomayor. And unlike a lot of people who lean to the right, I don't really think she's a partisan hack. I disagree with basically most of her philosophy, but at the end of the day, I don't think she wants the court's opinion to be swayed by the public. Because I don't think that she wants any shred of judicial independence to be completely destroyed. So basically, it comes down to a clerk from the court who disagreed. Now, I don't think that a liberal law student would apply to work for a conservative justice. I really don't. Maybe Roberts, but even then. So it probably would have come from a clerk or a hacker. A clerk from one of the liberal justices or a hacker. And my bet is it's probably a clerk. And assuming that's the case, and like I said, it could be a hacker as well. If it is the case that it's a clerk, I hope that when they find out who this person is, they're expelled from whatever law school they're in, if they're still in law school. They are fired from whatever law firm they work for, if they work for a law firm, and they're disbarred permanently for life. Because this is a serious breach of ethics. And you can read all the, stuff on why that's the case. It really is that bad that they really need to have that severe of punishment. But anyway, moving on from that, let's go ahead and look at some of the redistricting proposals. Most of these are actually pretty reasonable and proportional. I think the Hudson Valley is kind of interested in this district right here. And Albany getting its own district, that's reasonable. Staten Island being linked with the correct parts, and the Long Island districts being compact, except for the third, which is kind of weird. And then, of course, you have these districts, which upstate, it's a little bit messy in this map. If we go here, a nonpartisan group drew this, and it's not bad. It's pretty compact for the most part, and Staten Island gets put in with the parts of I forget which borough it is, but Staten Island gets paired with its historical neighborhoods in the main part of New York. Upstate, it's a little bit of a mess, but okay. Next one, the Republicans drew this map, which maybe goes a bit too far. In the other direction, but it also is reasonably fair. Because Dems would still wind up with a pretty decent majority in New York. But, the Republicans could do reasonably, it's not a competitive state. We have to remember that, but, and everything looked not unreasonably. This district isn't as compact as it could be. Same with the 4th. And some of these are kind of messy, but it's because you want to be compact around, the population centers, and I get that. And then you've got a few more proposals. This one's very similar to the other one, and I don't think this is a bad map. And then this guy released a third one, which is very similar. And like I said, it's not really a bad map. The 5th is kind of, I think they could have made some changes. I think it should still be. Of course, the Democrats, they obviously don't want any part of what's currently going on, and they drew an even more aggressive gerrymander to submit to the court for recommendation to the special master. And, they would flip the 1st district and flip the Staten Island district and make the 1st district less Republican than was in their own initial proposal. And, yeah, like, what? And none of it's, I'll give them credit, it's more compact than their initial proposal, but there's still some awful stuff, like the 3rd going up across the Long Island Sound, and the 16th stretching like that, and it's bad. Then you had this map, which kind of is a bit too favorable to the Democrats, I think, but it has a lot of competitive districts, so I mean, it's a map. And then this is new. This map just got put out today, and, this is even worse than the Democrats' map. This is just a purely partisan map. Ugh. Except, weirdly, they drew a competitive district here. What? I have to see this. Yeah, okay. Huh. Yeah. That doesn't make a damn bit of sense, but why put Staten Island and Manhattan together? That doesn't make any sense. They're not historically linked. I mean, you could say the same thing about, the Staten Island and this part of New York, but they're far closer. Ugh. God. I thought the Democrats' the Democrats' proposal to the special master was bad. This is terrifying. I mean, okay, the Republicans would probably pick up all these upstate seats that are competitive. And they'd probably pick these two up as well most years. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And they could probably be competitive in the 10th, so 9. But that's about the same. But the Democrats would, in some years, completely wipe out the Republicans down to 2 districts out of, 26. Which is nowhere near proportional to how New Yorkers vote. So, yeah. Democrats' proposal is really bad. That's nearly as bad. Maybe it's worse. I actually think it is worse. I actually think probably the best one is this first proposal from this guy, but there's also some other good ones. The remedial map's okay. And the Empire Center for Public Policy proposal is also not terrible. The Common Cause is also not appalling. Anyway, so let's talk about primaries that happened yesterday. I know I'm dragging on, but it's been busy. So busy, in fact, I didn't even talk about the fact that the primary was on my birthday. So, yeah. So, quite a few candidates for the Republican Party primary and J.D. Vance was the front runner. I'll say front runner. He really wasn't. I mean, he was barely polling ahead at the end of the day. But he did wind up winning by just under 10%, carrying 32% of the vote, a third of the vote. And, well, over 1 million people voted in the Republican primary. Now, the Democratic primary was not competitive at all. I think everybody expected Tim Ryan to win, and he did. But only 500,000 people voted. So the Republicans in the primary basically doubled what the Democrats were doing. And I think this is going to lead to a problem. And I'll see if I can do like a county by county breakdown. But I'm pretty comfortable moving this from I'm pretty comfortable putting this in safe GOP right now because the end of the day, you're not overcoming a 500,000 vote difference. Because in a presidential election year, if we go to that, that's a big old gap. Yeah, about 5 million votes cast. So that's a 10% gap in a presidential election year. And if I go back to 2018, I can look at how many votes were cast in a midterm year in Ohio. And we're talking about 4.5 million. 4.4 million. And what's 500,000 votes from that? We're talking about 12 or 13%. So so we're talking a 10 to 13% gap that Tim Ryan has to make up. And that's just with primary voters. That's not counting general election voters who didn't vote in the primary but lean one way or another. And, well, it's pretty bad. In the gubernatorial election, very similar thing happened. About, 1 million votes cast on the Republican side, less than 500,000 cast on Democratic side. Honestly, those races are pretty safe. I'm pretty confident about those. If we move to Indiana and look at this primary result, we've got the 1st congressional district in Indiana. And there's about a 12,000 vote gap between all Democrats combined and all Republicans combined. And basically, it could very well be competitive. I'd lean it towards the Democrats right now just because the seat does have a partisan lean in favor of the Democrats. If we actually look at it, and this is really the only competitive seat in Indiana. For example, if I look at this map, this is what the seats currently look like, and that's Indianapolis. Everything else is just super Republican country. So if I actually look at this, well, this is Gary, Indiana, and it has Republican areas, and in a good year, the Republicans could maybe take it. But it hasn't had a Republican in office since 1928. And before that, there was Democrat for a few years, Republican for a few years, and you have to go back to, early 1900s, and then 1800s before that, and then it was actually a pretty competitive seat, stretching back to the 1870, about 1880. Well, 1878. Then it was a pretty solid Democratic. Before that, it was a pretty solid Democratic seat. Yeah. Of course, that. It was actually reasonably competitive during the Whig era. And then it was just a solid Democratic seat for a long time, and then became a swing district for a little bit. And then, like I said, it has not had I want to see location. At least it shows me. Man, I really wish we could have all those the maps. Yeah, so the first district here from 2010 to 2013, or 2003 to 2013, was there. The new district. Okay, so the first district's going to be a new district. So anyway, I kind of went crazy there trying to figure out where it covers, but basically it covers that northeastern corner. It might be competitive. I'm going to watch it in the general election. And we'll see. But yeah, every other district is safe for is pretty much safe for the incumbent. The 7th district is Indianapolis, so but yeah, so that's pretty much it. Whoa, what the? For today, I want to thank all y'all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see y'all next time. Take it easy. Bye-bye.